Billiken fans, it's Zach Miller and Peter Hale. It's the Midtown Madness Podcast. Before we get going, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, drop a comment down below. It helps. This episode and the whole season of the Midtown Madness Podcast is brought to you by Two Men in a Garden. Pete, as we talked about last time, I had a chance to visit Two Men in a Garden HQ. They support local. They are local, and they also have their HQ as part of Kitchen Hub STL, where local chefs and food product developers can rent space to run their product development and distribution. I snagged a couple of these Kitchen Hub STL made products, and I have yet to try them yet, but I'm getting there. I also tried the Harissa sauce. It's great. Go check out Two Men in a Garden online at twomeninthegarden.com. Follow them on social at Two Men Salsa on Insta and Twitter, and you can find their products at any St. Louis grocery store or online at that website. Peter, we avoided disaster. We almost had to cancel the recording.
We did, Zach. I think both you and I, our moods would have been a lot different if that basketball game against Providence didn't go the way it did. But luckily somehow, and we'll get to this eventually, but somehow we pulled out a win in that one.
Yeah, I went through a roller coaster of emotions, and we'll get into it, but because I was level-headed yesterday, the start of this game sent me into a tailspin, and then I had to pull myself out of it once we started coming back. But let's talk about men's soccer. They played in the NCAA tournament. Go figure. The Billikens played another overtime game in postseason. Are you shocked by this?
No, I'm not. I'm only shocked that they didn't end up playing in overtime in their second NCAA tournament game. The way things have been going lately.
It was heading that way too, though.
Yeah, it was.
A 4-2 win over Memphis in overtime. The first round of the NCAA tournament, that was on Thursday, November 17th. This was just Memphis' second NCAA tournament appearance, and the last time they were in it was 2004. They beat SLU twice that year, once in the regular season and once in the Conference USA tournament. This had a lot of goals. This really was a stark contrast to what we've kind of seen over the last few weeks with the Billikens.
It really did, or it really was, and it's funny because I think the Post-Dispatch headline was, or STL Today was, SLU had an offensive explosion or something like that. They referred to the offense erupts. It was something like that, and I thought that really didn't. I don't know. I didn't feel like it was an offensive showcase or anything like that. It was kind of back and forth. It was a pretty well played game, but I guess I'm a little spoiled by what it means to have a true offensive eruption. I think of a game like the women's game against Missouri State earlier this season or something like that, where it's like 7-0, 4-2 with two of those goals coming in overtime. Yeah, it's a lot, but it wasn't wild or anything like that.
No, this one it started off, of course, like the women's game against Memphis. Eric Primo scores on an assist from Gabriel Christensen. Really tough defending by SLU on this one.
Yeah, not great at all. They let him get to a pretty good spot deep in the box, and then once he finally did put a ball through, it went by a lot of white shirts. And I know, you don't have a perfect camera angle, and not everybody was in a perfect, he put it in a pretty good line. But I just thought the defense was a little lacking on this possession, unfortunately.
Seth Anderson gets one back, and he really didn't have to do much of anything on this one, as Mad's sister Peterson did all the work for him in this one.
Yeah, he made a really nice run, and Anderson was just wide open by the end of it. All he had to do was finish, which he did cleanly. But credit to Peterson for creating that one.
Absolutely beautiful run through at least three Tiger defenders, and then laid it right off to Seth Anderson, who had the yawning cage, as you'd hear on a hockey night on ESPN. 76th minute, and that Seth Anderson goal, it really felt like it was coming. Like it was since Memphis had scored, it really felt like the Billikens were in control. But in the 76th minute, the Billikens get a PK from Alberto Suarez. This one was definitely a penalty kick.
Yeah, even the goalies get a certain amount of a leeway when they've got to play on a ball, but in this case, John Klein was streaking all the way down toward the goal line. He was into the box. Memphis's keeper had both arms up high and caught him with his second arm right in the face. Like really his kind of loose fist got Klein right in the face. Klein went down, and that was an easy yellow card at PK, which Suarez then hit really hard, low to the right, well taken, and it was 2-1 SLU.
Yeah, again, Billikens were dominant in the stretch leading up to this goal. And I mean, the ball was rolling downhill, so to speak, and the Billikens were going to score eventually. However, in the 79th minute, Memphis gets one right back. And this is kind of when you start feeling a little nervy because the effort wasn't there on this one, I thought.
It was so quick after SLU's goal. I think it was 3 minutes after, and it was just kind of a scrum in front of the net. It was sloppy.
Poor clearance.
It was, yeah. And this was really the second, credit to Memphis because both times SLU really got caught defending poorly. Memphis made them pay for it. And it was 2-2 with about 10 minutes left in regulation.
Yeah, this one, I got a little bit of PTSD watching the Billikens rebound in the game today because it really felt like a similar issue where the Billikens couldn't get the ball and gain possession and clear it. Everyone was just right at a Memphis attacker, and eventually Memphis, law of averages played out and Memphis scored. This game went to overtime, as we mentioned. And in overtime, Enzo Akpoye, who I was critical of in the final, so glad to see him score here. It was a bit of an odd one, but it was a beautiful ball to Akpoye.
Yeah, it's one of Lane Warrington's kind of trademark long throw-ins. He got it in, and I think it hit off initially a Memphis defender's head. SLU player was right there too. Initially, I thought maybe this would be kind of a 2-assist kind of thing. But it hit off the Memphis defender's head and then hit off Poye's head right after that. Now when he got it, put it down a little bit and once again bounced off another defender's head before it ricocheted into the net. I'm not sure if the keeper would have had a better play on it if it didn't hit his own defender first or not, but regardless, Okoye played it well and finished.
The 108th minute, Jack Micah put this one to bed from Seth Anderson.
Yeah, really nice cross from Anderson here. And at this point in the game, Memphis is pushing pretty hard to equalize. Field gets stretched out, that's right. And Anderson had room to operate and just gave him a really nice cross to finish.
Felt like besides the goals, the Billikens really were in control of this game. 19-12 were the shots for the Billikens, 10-5 shots on goal. Corners were 5-3 Billikens. The fouls 14-9 Memphis. Welsh was not bad for Memphis in this one. In goal, sorry.
6 saves. Yeah, I thought he was good. I mean, he made a couple really big ones too. This is one that SLU could have won in regulation had he not had such a good game. So credit to him. I think we'd kind of run into some decent goaltending down the stretch, and he was no exception.
Yeah, Billiken soccer playing Memphis in the freezing cold for the second time in 5 days. Yep. The Billiken win earned them the right to take on 13 seed Indiana in Bloomington on Sunday. That's this morning. And this one didn't go the Billikens' way, Pete.
No, unfortunately it didn't. Indiana wasn't the worst draw. They were actually pretty similar to SLU in a lot of the metrics and a lot of the ratings and rankings. They were on the inside of that top 16 and SLU was a little bit on the outside, but I wasn't upset about the draw or anything. Regardless, it just wound up being not their day. I thought they played it pretty evenly for most of the game. A little bit of the second half, it felt like Indiana was kind of controlling possession. Unfortunately, They're the ones who came away with the win. But the cool thing here, Zach, is there's a lot of history in this matchup.
It was a lot of fun. Kind of the lead up felt big. It felt way bigger than maybe a game against like Loyola Marymount or a similar, big time program, but maybe not one that Midwest SLU kind of was the college soccer pinnacle. And they talked about it on the broadcast. It was about the only good thing the broadcast did the entire time. But no, they talked about how, SLU hadn't, of course we haven't won one since the 70s. And around that time of the last Billiken, and I could be misremembering, but around the last time the last Billiken National Championship was actually the inception of Indiana's program. So then Indiana has become since then the kind of the most storied program since 76 or whatever it was. So
yeah, that's right. And 7 of their 8 national championships came under Jerry Yeagley, who the field is named after. I guess it's his son who coaches there now and his grandson who plays there now. It's just his DNA is all over the program, literally and figuratively. And that's it's impressive what they've done, because like you said, SLU had already won all 10 of their national titles by the time Indiana came along, and they've appeared in 47 NCAA tournaments, second behind SLU's 50. So yeah, so Indiana has gotten all 47 of their NCAA tournament appearances since SLU's last title. So SLU has the most appearances ever, 50. Indiana has 47, second all time, and they have the second most national titles with 8. We actually have played each other quite a bit. It looks like a total of what is this, 50 or 45 times. SLU is 17, 23, and 5 all time heading into Indiana in this game. The last time they played was back in 2016. So there's a ton of history here, and it's a fun matchup for early in the tournament like that.
Yeah, it feels like a match that should be played more often. Technically they haven't played since 2016, but I believe a preseason game was played.
Yes, that's right.
A couple of years ago, because associate head coach is Kevin Robeson, now brother of former Billiken midfielder Mike Robeson. Again, I think Kevin Robeson was a guy that I had as a person who could be considered to replace McGinty before Kalish, but their father recently passed away, and that to benefit the Kevin C. Robe, I believe, to benefit a foundation in the name of Kevin Robeson, their father. The exhibition was played at Soccer Park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was, I believe, last year, I want to say.
Okay.
But yeah, again, when they line up and you have the red, the blue, it gives off big time Man United Chelsea vibes.
It did. And they both have like a really clean jersey look. I mean, everything about it just looks like
it's classic.
This classic historical, and especially playing in Indiana, you've got every camera angle. There is something either touting their national titles or the conference championships or college cups or whatever they had around there. It was at Jerry Yeagley Field everywhere you can look. So they do a good job of decorating that stadium well. That's also the stadium, that black cinder track around there is where they have the little 500.
I learned about this. Yeah.
Which I had the benefit of seeing my freshman year. Some friends and I went out to Indiana to check that out.
How bizarre! Like a track cycling race among like Greek life at a university in nowhere, Indiana. Like, what a bizarre tradition.
It's great. Everything about it is just awesome. I mean, Bloomington's a great town. I mean, it's a little ways from Indianapolis, and there's not a lot else around there. But yeah, the fact that this comes up, and there's a lot of different fraternities that have their own team. There are cycling clubs. There's the Townies. They call themselves the Cutters. I mean, there's what's the movie Breaking Away? The movie that's about it is, by the way, a great sports movie. If you haven't seen that one, I know you're a sports movie guy.
I like sports. I like movies. I like sports movies.
You'll love it. You'll love it.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to watch it.
But yeah, it's a great tradition, and I know we're getting a little far away from
Yeah.
the soccer game here, but that's a couple different traditions both melding on that particular venue, and it was kind of a cool place to see the game.
Yeah, this one again. This game could be like you get this game every year, and every other year it's in St. Louis. This could be a candidate for a game you play at City Park.
Oh yeah, that would be great, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would that you do it. I mean, you could do it as a preseason game, as a fundraiser too. Again, yeah, 75th minute. It took 75 minutes for Indiana to break the seal in this one. Ryan Wittenbrink. This one was kind of off a tough turnover from the Billikens.
Yeah, not the best defending. You had alluded to it when we were talking about Memphis a little bit. And then Wittenbrink, who's their leading scorer, ends up with the ball just inside the box. He made a nice little cut to get open and then just put it in the bottom corner, past an outstretched Carlos Tofern. Tofern played it fine. He placed it really well. He struck it well, but just, a little sloppy defending. By this point, it already felt like SLU was kind of playing for the tie, like trying to get to overtime again. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe Indiana was just kind of winning the possession game by then. But it did seem like SLU really wasn't making a big effort to move it forward as much.
The first 30 minutes or 20, 30 minutes was very exciting. It was very entertaining. And then I texted my buddy, I go, this game settled into boring as hell.
It wasn't the best second half.
No, but I really liked what the Billikens were doing in this one with the high press, and it really looked like Indiana was struggling to with how quickly guys like John Klein were closing down on them, and they were turning it over quite a bit. The Billikens were playing really well, and they were kind of tracking back, I thought, in a way, not necessarily tracking back because it wasn't a transition deal, but it was like, you turn the ball over and then the high forward would drop back and try to win the ball from behind. So I thought the Billikens did really well there. And you saw less of that as the game progressed. And eventually Indiana got a break when, one of the Billiken defenders, I can't even remember who it was, but did not heed the classic advice of when in doubt, kick it out. He tried to overhead kick it, and it went right to an Indiana defender and an Indiana forward, and the rest is history. Wittenbrink scores. The shots in this one were owned by Indiana, 16-11 Hoosiers, and then shots on goal were 3-0. The Billikens didn't get a shot on goal. That's going to be frustrating. You get to the second round of the NCAA tournament and not put a shot on goal. There were several. I kind of take issue with no shots on goal there.
Yeah, I think that is, and I put that in the notes here. I think it's just not indicative of some of the good chances that SLU actually had.
Not even that, but I mean, I guess the goalie has to make a save for it to be considered a shot on goal. And really, the ball was cleared off the line by a defender, so it was technically blocked. But I mean, it's about as shot on goal as you can get. So again, I mean, I guess you can come away and say we did put one on net, and it should have gone in. And to be fair, Indiana should have scored too. I mean, Carlos Tofern came up huge in the first half, and I wouldn't have been surprised. He came up for that final throw in. I was like, sure, Carlos Tofern's going to score. Fine. He's done everything else for the Billikens. He's going to score.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
I wouldn't have surprised me the last few games that he's had.
Yeah, the Billikens finished with a 12-5-3 record. The season is now over. Again, the shootout wins count as ties in the official record.
Right.
Little deceiving. But I think this season, while a disappointing result, on the whole, you saw how well Kalish was able to bring together a bunch of guys that hadn't played together before. He replaced 9 of 10 or 9 of 11, I guess, starters.
Right.
And put together a second round NCAA tournament. I don't see any problem there.
Yeah, no, that I think that's right. I think that's a pretty solid season, especially given if you remember the start that we had this year. We had a lot of maybe a little too much respect coming into this season based on last year's performance, ranked number 10. I don't know if we really felt confident about that ranking, but had that rocky start, dropped a few early, like 3 of the first 4. And then we haven't lost since I think that last loss, the only conference loss was that Rhode Island game, kind of in the middle of the conference season.
The one that wasn't even like on ESPN Plus because of rain.
And wound up being what they won with like 6 seconds left or something crazy like that.
I think the Billikens tied it right before.
Yeah, we tied it with under 2 minutes, and then they finished it off with basically a buzzer beater. So anyway, so this team hasn't lost a lot in a long time. Like that once they came together, they really came together and played better and better and better. And who knows? Maybe another team, it would have been a different result in this another matchup. I mean, would have been a different result this round, but overall, I think it's a solid season. We've got the top ranked incoming class. And I think this team will likely be picked preseason to win the conference again.
Yeah, I think so too. Number 1 recruiting class in the nation. That is insane. And I believe the next year is actually like 3rd ranked at the moment too. So a lot of talent coming in for Kalish's squad. Let's move over to men's basketball. And this one was it is. I will never say it's hard work being a Billiken fan because it is. It sucks. Sports suck. Like it is the most infuriating. Like every team goes through this, but it feels like it's just you.
It really does. And then sometimes you have to pull back and remember there's only one team that actually wins a championship at the end of the season. No matter what sport it is, there's only one team that wins. And it's pretty easy for everybody else to come up with another reason why you're not happy. So I guess we do kind of have to step back and remind ourselves of that sometimes.
Yeah, I think the fans were rightfully excited though with the 90-84 win versus Memphis at home Tuesday 11:15, in which Yuri Collins made Kendrick Davis look like a baby.
He did. Davis had some big things to say coming into this game. Called himself a bad MFer, to kind of keep this one family friendly, and said he doesn't watch a lot of film. And he said he at least said he knew Collins was a good guard, but other than that, he was just going to do his thing. Now, I don't know about you. He did not look 100% to me, to be fair. Kendrick Davis looked a little off in this game. I've seen him play before.
He slipped a lot too.
He slipped a lot. I think he might be having some ankle issues or something. Regardless, I mean, he was still a good player, had 18 points, had a good game. But if you looked at this game, under the rubric of now here's Yuri Collins facing a huge test, a point guard who is a nationally known point guard, nationally respected, was conference player of the year last year, is a guy who scores a lot, who makes a lot of plays, small like him too, but really effective, and certainly no shortage of bravado. I would say Yuri passed his first big test this season, and that's no small thing.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. 22 points, 9 assists, 2 turnovers in 39 minutes. And I thought his defense was just as good as his offensive output in this one.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. He did a great job on Davis. Davis really he shoots a lot of threes. He was only 2 of 7 in this game, which is not terrible, but it's not what you want. And really I can think of one of the 2 that he made was just a wide open clean look.
Yeah, I think all of the ones he made were wide open and clean, and I think that's a huge testament to Yuri Collins is in that you noticed it a lot more.
Yeah, that's
right. You noticed that when I can only remember on maybe 5 or 6 occasions where Kendrick Davis scored, and it was like, Jesus, how do you get that wide open on every single one of them?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's where I was going with that is if you notice when a guy is open, that means he hasn't been open a whole lot.
Right.
So credit to Yuri for really doing a good job on him, even if he wasn't 100%, as I suspect. But Yuri won this one.
Speaking of defense, I want to highlight Gibson Jimerson in this one for his
Yep.
defense. Absolutely incredible defense. Amazing. He had one possession, and it may have been the best highlight of his career. And it was him. He he basically guarded the post. He denied the entry into the post and basically fronted a power forward center. And it was just absolutely incredible, the work rate from him.
It was, and that the one where that he converted into a fast break at the other end when Yuri kind of threaded the needle.
Yeah, I think no, I don't know. It might have
Or
been, but
am I mixing up plays here?
either way,
Yeah. Well,
uh,
yeah, and I think he's improved by multitudes as a defender. I mean, for a couple of years, we talked about him as being on the high mark rule, right?
mhm,
Just outscore your man, and you're going to justify your existence out there on the floor. That's not the case anymore. He's really stepped up. He's a smart defender, and I think he's probably even more effective off ball than on,
yeah.
and positions himself well and kind of anticipates well. And I think that's another thing that he continues to get better at on the offensive end as well. I mean, he's so good about getting out in transition, constantly moving on offense, getting open, making reads. I really love the way he's built out his game, and he's so much more than just a shooter. I can't say enough about how well he played in this Memphis game.
Yeah, this was a fun one to be at up until about the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah,
It was tough. Pickett had a great
yeah,
game. I mean, everybody who played the lion's share of minutes had outstanding efforts in this one. Pickett 14-7, Okoro 9-11, Javante Perkins though.
yeah.
I think Billiken fans are going to have to. You're going to have to take these games with Perkins. Hopefully, they'll stop by the end of non-conference, but I think you're going to see a lot of games where, and you'll see it. We have so many options. I think you'll see a lot of guys disappear for a game here and there.
I think that's right, but mostly in his case,
Mhm.
he's clearly not 100%. He's still recovering from his knee, but he's also we were told coming into this season his ankles were banged up too. Like there were long stretches that he did not play before that first exhibition because his ankles are hurt. And I was at Evansville or our first game where he was like just limping, and it looked like he was
Yeah.
limping on both legs, still playing. He did look a little bit more fit in these last two, the Maryland and Providence games. But Memphis, a team that is so big and physical and athletic like them, it's just not. If he's not 100%, we've already talked about how the rest of his numbers outside of scoring just aren't there because he's not fighting for rebounds. He's not able to defend at 100%, and he's never been a great defender even when he is. These are just not a good matchup for him. Memphis and Maryland and Auburn are about as bad as it's going to get for Perkins in terms of the matchup where he can kind of shine. I hope I'm wrong about Auburn.
He's gonna have
That
to shoot threes.
He's going to have to, yeah. But and look, I mean, it's easy to get open and hit those threes when you're playing Evansville, especially when they had to go to their bench, or some of the other, earlier teams, Murray State, or in the exhibition. But you don't have that kind of time and space against Memphis. This was not a game for somebody who's hobbled.
Yeah, no, what this was shades of havoc physically from Memphis.
Yeah,
They really played that foul you every time down the court
yep,
and make the refs make a call. Get your hand in the cookie jar and hope it doesn't get whistled. So
yep.
this was a tough game, and the Billikens I thought handled it really well. They thought they handled the pressure really well up until about the last 5 minutes, and just kind of I felt like maybe they were gassed and maybe it was just a little poor decision making based on fatigue, but They were up 14 with under 4 to play and nearly let this one get away. It has to feel good though to come away with a win when everyone is starting to, oh no, here we go again. And you kind of prove them wrong in a way. Eke one out, I guess.
It's it's crazy because coming down the stretch in this one where, yeah, we had that lead and the under 4, and I'm like, this is great. Let's just kind of put this one to bed. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, I had completely forgotten how these games made me feel last season. Auburn, Belmont, UAB, all these games that we were leading by double digits and lost. And then in conference, it happened several times where we had big leads and let it get narrow, and we didn't necessarily lose all of those, but we let those big comfortable wins get away. The walk-ons putting their warm-ups back on, level in some cases. So yeah, thank God they held on this time, and yeah, really a relief to get a good win against a good team to not blow a lead. I think the difference between this one and last season is last season we really tried to kind of slow it down, burn clock, kind of got out of the rhythm of what was making us succeed against those other teams in the first place. And this time around, it wasn't that so much as a lack of execution. It was turnovers, it was poor decision making, it was shooting the wrong shot at the wrong point in the shot clock. So I'm in a way, I'm glad that it wasn't just a change in strategy, but it was actually just got a little sloppy there for a couple minutes. But luckily, it was too little, too late for Memphis.
I think we can be done playing Memphis in any sport for a while. I think
Yes,
call it. I
we're
mean,
good.
cancel
We're
all
good.
the yeah. I mean, it's just it got infuriating. Like I was even mad when I flipped on VCU in Memphis today. I was like, shh, I don't want to watch this.
Yeah, I'm sick of them.
Yeah, no kidding. The next game, are we gonna do this? I guess we are.
I don't
We
want
owe
to,
it. I don't. I mean,
but yeah, I mean,
I feel like people listen to us for like the good stuff. Like they don't like we get more listeners when the Billikens win. I mean, that's just that's
yeah,
kind of comes with the
that's true.
territory.
That's true.
Um,
No one
I,
wants to wallow in this.
no 95-67 versus Maryland at the Hall of Fame tip-off tournament at the Mohegan Sun on Saturday the 19th. Yeah. I'm never watching a game where I did Saturday again. So no, I think look, these happen. Dude, we put our stock in 18 to 22-year-olds. Um it's nothing makes sense at times. I just think this one again, you look at I think there was a lot of people wondering why we were favored today after what happened against Maryland. And I think I think the people at Vegas have it right in that they're not like that spread is so terrible. You have to wonder that like, that's just a complete anomaly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way you kind of got to look at it. Right.
Well, there's a lot of things early in a season that we just don't know, and that Vegas doesn't know, and that KenPom and the RPI and the net and whatever other system is out there, we just don't know yet. Like you've got to start playing some games before you actually have some reliable data. And one of the things, to Slew's credit, one of the things we did not know, I think Maryland's a lot better than anyone realized.
Yes.
Because they didn't just dominate and destroy us yesterday and put a game out of reach in the opening minutes and it never looked close. Today, they did that to Miami. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't the number wasn't as huge. They were up 13 on Miami at halftime, but they only added to that lead in the second half. Miami scored a little more than we did. Maryland scored 88, which is pretty close to what they did against us yesterday. So yeah, the number is not as dramatic, but 88-70 against Miami is a huge win. Again, Miami was 4-0 going into that game. In fact, all 4 teams coming into this tournament were 3-0. So, we all had a lot to learn here in terms of who actually was a little bit better. And Maryland, a team that not a whole lot of people were thinking about coming into the season, looks like a kind of team that's going to be a big spoiler in the Big Ten this year. So that's just something that I don't think we realized.
No, not at all. And I think, Travis took responsibility for that loss too.
Yes.
He said he didn't have his team ready to play. He didn't scout them as well as, Memphis' head coach's name escapes me right now. He said he didn't.
No, it's Kevin
Kevin
Willard,
Willard.
Memphis's head coach is
Sorry,
Penny.
Maryland.
Yes,
Maryland. Sorry, there's a lot of
Penny
M's.
Hardaway. Yeah,
We played
right,
Memphis, Maryland. We could have played Miami.
right.
But yeah, no, I think Kevin Willard had Maryland ready to go. But I think one issue is that the entire game plan was centered around Maryland not shooting the three very well in their first game. And yeah, well, they shot really well in this game and in their next game too. So, Pete, what do you make of that?
Yeah, that actually. I was not prepared for that either. I thought this Maryland team was just going to be a big physical grind, because they really in their first couple games they were really only scoring about 70, like low 70s, and they were only allowing about 50. So their first games were all kind of in that neighborhood. But again, they're playing teams like Binghamton, and I'm kind of forgetting who else they played, but it was 3 bye games essentially.
Niagara.
Niagara was one of them. So it's 3 bye games that they start the season with, right? So you don't know a whole lot because it's like, okay, none of those teams are great. I don't think any of those teams are supposed to win their conference. So it wasn't like kind of one of those sneaky good lower conference teams. They were just beating teams by 20. They were doing it with defense. They were not shooting particularly well. And I thought, okay, if they're just not a shooting team. They're going to grind you down. They're going to body you. They're going to play defense. They've got good size. They're going to force you to take bad shots. So I did not at all expect a game where they would shoot the lights out from 3 and then, could proceed to shut us down completely as well. It's not after they, kind of struggled to get to 70 against some of those smaller conference teams. I didn't think they were going to almost touch 100 against us.
And I think the amazing part is that the first 3 to 5 minutes, they were a terrible shooting team. They couldn't hit water from a boat. It was crazy. And then all of a sudden it just, bam.
Early on, they were just getting it done inside. Mm-hmm. You're right. I mean, but they did end up, as the first half went on, they were shooting over 47% from 3. They cooled off a little bit in the second half, but still finished about 41% on the game. They were over 50% from the field overall. From the line, they were okay. They were 64%. But the fact of the matter is, you're right. We did structure our defensive scheme around them not being a great 3-point team and a 3-point shooting team. And it took us a long time to make any adjustments to that, because in the first half, we sure looked content to watch them shoot and make an endless stream of 3-pointers. And that was really, really hard to watch.
Yeah, the Billikens they didn't shoot well in this game. Maryland came in highly touted on defense, and I didn't think that was really that didn't play a factor in our shooting night, I felt.
No, I mean, look, when you give up a little bit of size, that's always going to be, kind of one strike against you when it comes to shooting on a team like this. They were a better defensive team than we had seen yet this season. Clearly, we didn't have any problems scoring against the first few teams we had played, even Memphis. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we missed a lot of open shots. I don't think our shot selection was great. But I also don't think it was them just completely shutting down the perimeter, for example. We did shoot 23s on the game, which is a number probably lower than I would have liked to see based on what we thought we were going to be shooting heading into the season. But yeah, we just were. I mean, we hit 5 of them, so it's not like there was much going on from the 3-point line.
How much do you think Perkins' stat line was influenced by the score in this one? I felt almost like, once the game was out of hand and there was obviously no way we would come back, just get Perkins out there and let him shoot his way back into form.
And that's kind of what they did. He only played 19 minutes, but he ended up with 17 points, and he looked a lot more like his old self in this one than he did in any of the previous games, especially that Memphis game that we just talked about. So he was kind of a lone bright spot in this otherwise dark night. But look, it was the second half. This game was already out of hand. I just don't know how much I read into it, other than I think it's good that we got him some run, got him, maybe a confidence boost, and it was good to kind of see him trying a few things that he had not done previously.
Obviously, we shot terribly. What else in this one was kind of the stuff that stood out to you as just being just not good?
We talked about the defense not being great. Like we just, I put, we couldn't or wouldn't guard the perimeter for quite a long time. We struggled in transition, going both directions. We got beat down the floor in defensive transition too many times to count, and it was one of those days where the body language didn't look good at all. I mean, we were just getting outworked. So against a team like Maryland, we looked undersized, overpowered, outworked, and it's that last one, the effort that I really struggle with, because the other things we knew, right? Like we knew Maryland had a lot of size, athleticism, and kind of how they were going to play defensively, but the effort just didn't seem to be there the way that it needed to be. It looked like we got discouraged early, and that's something that really bummed me out. The other thing I'll say here is the guy on their team who I think beat us the worst, Dante Scott, is exactly the kind of player that I was worried about coming into this season, because we just don't have a matchup for him. He's a 6'8", 230-pound power forward. When you look at him, he's just that traditional number 4 in a power conference. An NBA 4 used to kind of look like this as well before, the NBA has kind of just changed completely. But he's a guy he's explosive. I mean, he had a put back dunk at one point where I had to kind of go and like check his bio, because I was like, man, who is this guy? I didn't know a whole lot about him coming into the game other than his numbers and his size. And look, he also shot some threes. That's something I don't know if we knew he would even try, let alone go 2 for 5. He was 7 for 7 from the free throw line. He just beat us in every way possible. Luckily, there are not a lot of guys like this in the A10, but we're going to run into guys like this in power conference matchups, which means if we make the NCAA tournament, we're going to see more guys like this. And I really want to know what our plan is when a team rolls out with a center and a dude like this, who, I'm sorry, but Javon Pickett just isn't going to stop. So I wonder how we prepare for a guy like this in the future, because he torched us for 25 points in this game.
What's the bottom line here? Obviously, the Billikens come out the next game. They struggled, but they redeemed themselves with 1 of 2 in Uncasville, Connecticut. But what do you see here? Is this a throw out the garbage game and move on, or is there something here that, I mean, you mentioned Dante Scott being a weak, a blind spot for us as far as matchups go, but is there something else here that could give you cause for concern?
It was almost like an existential crisis I was having watching this game. It was, are we just not good enough? Because here's a team, Maryland, coming into this game. I think I had told you it was in the almanac, they were picked 11th in the Big Ten. I'm not sure what they were picked on Big Ten Media Day, but they're kind of like just barely below that halfway point in the Big Ten, which is a big, bloated, oversized conference. And look, they very well may be better than that. But they just absolutely mopped the floor with SLU, despite having a new coach, some new personnel, not super high expectations, and a scouting report that says they can't shoot. So this was like, do we just not have the horses to compete with a program like this consistently? And that really worried me, because if we are coming into the season thinking we're a sure thing in the NCAA tournament, top 25 kind of team, who has a good shot to win the A10, what does it say when we're getting beat this badly by a middle of the pack power conference team? Are we just going to get embarrassed every time we play a power conference team? And we find out a little bit more after Providence. Maybe we find out a little bit more after Maryland played Miami too. Like, they actually are really good, and maybe they are a top half Big Ten team. But I think there are some things, especially I want to say rebounding, that we really, really need to clean up if we're going to beat teams like this. We have to shoot better, clearly. I mean, that's obvious, but it's those effort things that that have to be there, because if we've said this before, but our offense seems to click a lot better when the defensive effort is there, and I think that's what's got to be there.
Pete, I think defense, or sorry, not defense, but rebounding. Well, defense too, but rebounding in this Providence game nearly sank the Billikens.
It did. It really did, especially on the offensive glass. 15 offensive rebounds for Providence. And I was ready for that to be our storyline of why we lost this game. But luckily we didn't.
Yeah, somehow, some way, the Billikens overcome an absolutely horrendous rebounding game to beat the Providence Friars 76-73. Fred Thatch did not play in this one. He left the Maryland game with an apparent knee injury. I think we were nervous. It didn't seem too terrible, Pete, but we got a little bit of an update from Rammer on the post-game show.
Yeah, it sounds like they're just being cautious here, and that they're just kind of giving him some rest. You're right. We were never. This was never the kind of thing where I thought like he blew out an ACL or anything like that.
Right.
He was kind of limping off. It looked a little sore. I think he's going to be all right. So that's good news.
Yeah, definitely good to see that, because he was sorely missed, especially on the defensive end and the rebounding.
Yeah, he really was.
Again, rebounding. It seems like a real issue, and Ford has raised this concern heading into the season, and it's here.
It is. And look, if you look at the box score of this game, you see Providence out rebounded SLU 38-35. They had 15 offensive rebounds to our 10. That doesn't look like the sky is falling, but to watch this game, it just looked like we were getting throttled on the glass, like just out hustled, out worked, out jumped, everything possible. And could not get defensive boards. That 15, the way this game felt, it really felt more like 25. And our 10 sure didn't feel like 10 either. I can tell you that much too.
It was bizarre. It was a bizarre game, because I sometimes I enjoy when we win, going through other teams' message boards, tweets, all that kind of stuff, just to see what they're saying. And they thought they played like shit, honestly. Like and I guess, at the end of the day, they lost in really heartbreaking fashion, and for a lot of reasons. And, but like, they sounded like there was constant complaints. And I thought, even as the Billikens were clawing back into this game, I thought Providence still felt in control for most of the comeback. It just kind of felt like Billikens were chipping away. It wasn't necessarily like the Billikens took major control.
This was a game that was neck and neck for most of the first half. And at the end of the first half, Providence pulled away a little bit to give themselves a 6-point margin. We come out in the second half, and then they kind of build that lead a little bit in the second half. They got to double digits a few times. And it did feel like we were just kind of chasing that rabbit, and that we weren't going to get there in this game. So like you, I kind of had the feeling of, I don't think we're there in this one, like even at halftime, didn't feel great about the way we played. Down 6, I said, there's a lot of game left to play. It looks great. And it just in the second half, there was nothing about SLU's performance that made me feel very confident about where we were or what we were doing. And look, I know Providence isn't, was it last year or the year before where they won the Big East? I know they're down a little bit from where they were. They only beat Ryder to start the season by 1, you know. They did have big wins over Northeastern and Stonehill, but you know, they're supposed to. I think there was some thought that, you know, this isn't the Providence that did just dominate the Big East a couple seasons. So, you know, they lose to Miami by 10. Miami's a really good team. I just thought we would look a little better from the start here, you know, like when we were going back and forth, kind of trading baskets, trading stops within 2 to 4, basically the whole first half until the end. That's kind of where I felt like this was going to be. But then the way that first half finished and the way the second half got going, at least for the first 10 or so minutes, man, I don't know. I was really discouraged in this one.
Yeah, Ford has kind of become a bit of a meme in game. Just very animated. I don't know if I love, and I know that it was in the text message thread. Like, I just I wonder if he wears on officials, and I wonder if it backfires his working of the refs, so to speak.
His in-game demeanor, yeah, he chases refs down. He really reacts to stuff. He may have
And
been.
hey, I would do the same, but I'm not, Division I head coach.
Yeah, he look, his being upset with a couple of these calls, I think may have been justified on some of the bigger ones where he was kind of letting the refs have it. And I also wonder how much of this was kind of left over from yesterday, and the beat down SLU took yesterday, and him just not wanting anything to get out of hand today, because he does tend to react the biggest when things are not going well. You know, it's not like we were humming along playing a great game and then a call went the wrong way and he lost it. It was really when we were at our worst in this one, and that was true yesterday as well.
Yeah, he seems to have a bit of a rough demeanor towards the players too, and I think he probably could have been a little more positive in this one. I really, like I tweeted out, I think that a little more good vibes only.
Yeah.
That team had to be so beaten down after yesterday.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, like just let's build up. Let's not break down in this one,
Yeah.
And I was afraid that if he continued to break down, that the team would continue to slide. And luckily I was kind of wrong in that respect, but they used a lot of different looks in this one, a lot of different lineups, especially defensively in this.
They were way more experimental than I expected them to be.
I didn't like it.
Yeah, I was a little worried about it too. I thought maybe we would have a much tighter game plan, a much more kind of strict structure around what we were going to do in this one. But it felt a lot more experimental, like an exhibition or a buy game or something, where maybe you're throwing some different looks out there, seeing who's playing well together, things like that. And especially on the defensive end, we threw a lot of different things at them. Maybe it was just to throw Providence off, and hey, maybe to his credit, that worked in the end, even if there were times in this game it didn't feel like it.
Yeah, how do you feel about? I mean, like, what are you thinking when you fire up the game? First of all, I thought the game started at 3. I gotta admit, God bless Ross Chaffetz for sending me a video of the intros, because I was kind of in and out, like napping, and it went off, and I'm like, did he mean to send that? Like, did he send me a video from yesterday? Like, what's? So luckily, I woke up in time for tip. But what did you think? You fire up the game, and all of a sudden, we're in zone, and we're getting shot over again.
Right.
What? I mean, personally, I'm like, here we go.
I know. I had the same feeling, and I thought, here's a Providence team that, yeah, they've won. They're 3-1. They've lost to the only good team they played so far, but they haven't inspired a ton of confidence. Are we going to be that game that kind of sets the tone for the rest of their non-conference by having a big confidence building shooting performance over a team that a lot of people thought very highly of coming into this season?
Mm-hmm.
It also reminded me, I think, and it was somebody on Twitter the other night, forgetting who, Eric Pitlick, our Arch Baron Cup historian, tweeted the box score of the last time we played Providence. And if you remember that game, they did not miss a shot. I mean, so I was a little scarred from that memory, thinking like, oh my God, even though they've got a different roster this time around, is there just some like Providence juju here? And then I was also reminded of the fact that they're the closest thing to a home team in this event.
That's weird. It's happening a lot in these tournaments.
And it's technically another state, but it's like a 40-minute drive from their campus or something like that, where this event was held. Maybe it's a little bit longer than that. Maybe takes a little while to get around some of those windy northeastern roads. But regardless, they clearly had the home crowd with them. They had their cheerleaders, they had their mascot, they had their band. They had the closest thing to a home game that would have been possible in this event. And I was just kind of worried about some of these factors kind of coming together and it just being one of those games again for us. And I really didn't want to come home with a 3-2 record, man.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I hear you talking about one of these games for us. And that is something that as a fan, you do not realize that literally if you sat in on a podcast or whatever for like any team in the country, man, it's going to be one of those games for us. It's literally everybody goes through these things.
But think about, I think there is a little something to it in our case, because one of the big knocks on Travis has been, we really have not beaten ranked teams. We have not really beaten power conference teams, especially on the road or in neutral sites. We just have not done a great job. We've done a great job of beating the teams below us. And there's kind of a middle tier that we play pretty well. We just have not picked off many games at all, punching up. You know what I mean? And I was trying to think back to games where like we really laid one on a power conference team. There aren't many, but yes, the one that comes to mind immediately is Washington. But again, that was
Oklahoma.
That was before Travis. Yeah,
Oklahoma,
we had that.
Villanova, the 78 Classic.
The 78 Classic, out in Anaheim, the 76 Classic. And that was one of those events that I was thinking about, like, could this be that event for us this year? Because that event set the tone for a very, very good season that year, beating Oklahoma, Villanova, and who was the third that year?
No, we lost Oklahoma, Villanova, and
we won 3.
I know.
So we beat 3 power conference teams out in that event and really set the tone for a strong season. And I think I tweeted out before this week, I was like, this is the week that sets the tone, because we have Memphis, and then we're going to get 2 more power conference teams at the end of the week. And did it set the tone? I don't know. I mean, we laid an egg. We had a nice win in that first one, didn't let it get away. Second one, we completely laid an egg. Third one, we had a win, but not a very convincing win. So I don't really know what the takeaway is from that standpoint. But in terms of it just being one of those games, I think we actually do have a little bit more of an argument than a lot of other fan bases do, statistically speaking, in this era.
Yeah, I think you're right when it comes to this specific like type of that game, but I think everybody has their games, right? Like everybody will have like the idea of like a different type of collapse, a different type of egg that is laid, some chickens lay a red egg, some lay a blue egg. It's just a different different flavor of loss, I guess. But still a loss. But a couple of milestones, we'll just get that out of the way real quick, Pete.
Yeah, Yuri got his 600th assist in this game. He ended up with 21 points, 7 assists, and 5 turnovers. 5 turnovers, not ideal, but he was very good overall in this game. And then Javon Pickett reached his 1,000th career point. Obviously, most of those did not come with SLU, but he did get to that milestone with us and ended up with 10 and 6 on the day. So he just kind of finds a way to be productive. He did have a really big offensive rebound and putback, by the way, in the second half. Yes. As he did in that Memphis game. He seems, or not Memphis, but maybe it was Memphis. He seems to have a knack for coming up with big offensive rebounds.
It was the first half. The first half. It was tipping
Yeah.
at the buzzer.
So yeah, two big milestones for them. And then Okoro had 10 and 9. Solid game, but I don't think this was necessarily the best night for our bigs.
Yeah, no, I think it's funny that at the end of the day, we're lamenting the rebounds, and the two biggest plays of the game were a Javon Pickett offensive rebound and stick back, and then an Okoro defensive rebound, which I mean,
Yeah.
for the life of me, I thought for sure we were gonna lose this one because I'm literally like, they call a timeout for that. They call that second timeout. And I'm like, well, first of all, I thought they probably should have shot quickly and just tried to get a rebound
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
But I thought to myself that, oh my God, they're going to shoot with about 6 seconds to go and they're going to get a rebound. And then
Yep.
it's going to be just a stick back and game over. And thankfully, Okoro finally decided that he was going to block out and secured it. And then even then, I still have, that PTSD from Hassan French free throws. You see a big man go to the line
Yeah.
and you get nervous. But Okoro, to his credit, was
Yes.
absolutely nails at the line.
He was, and he hadn't been shooting them all game either. So this was big to get there and make both of them. These were his only attempts of the game.
Yeah, all of our starting five was in double digits in this one. A quiet game for Jimerson.
Yep.
Perkins was inefficient, but he's looking to try to do things that he normally would do.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he seemed to gain a little confidence in that second half against Maryland, even though the rest of our team was emotionally destroyed in that game. And that, I think that translated over to this one as well. Even in the first half, he made some some plays to the rim that we haven't really been seeing him trying yet, and that was really promising. He looked comfortable doing it. He wasn't limping as much. He's looked physically healthier every game, which is absolutely something you want to see. This wasn't the best shooting night for him. He was 1 of 6 from 3, 5 of 15 overall. It was not the best shooting night for SLU. I don't like either of these numbers. 3 of 15 from 3. Way too few makes, obviously, on 15 attempts. But 15 attempts, Zach, I mean, that's a lot less than what we expected. Even in that Maryland game when we went 5 for 20, which not great in either column. I kind of wanted to see us shooting more than 20. So to only shoot 15, it seems like it was a mission of Providence to kind of take away the 3-point line for us. And I think that worked because this is a team that they know is capable of scoring 90 points in a game. So they did a good job of taking that away. But yeah, not the most efficient or effective night from SLU.
Yeah, I actually thought Javante lost us the game there at the end. I think he took a runner that normally, like, I've noticed that I get a little anxious whenever when I can tell he's ready to go and try to get a bucket. When the previous 2 years, I would have been like, easy peasy, like it's in no matter what.
Yeah.
Now it's a little nervy. So I thought when he missed that runner towards the end, I thought that was our one shot, and luckily it was not. I really liked Pickett in this one for the most part. I thought I feel like we fall in love with things, and again, we weren't getting shots. They weren't going to let us shoot threes, and Yuri's a great driver. I think I really liked what Jimerson did off the bounce and tried to get to the hole a little bit more. I mean, they even called it out on the broadcast that, Jimerson is that 3-point gunner, but hey, the kid's rounded out his game, and he's able to shoot off the bounce within the arc, get to the go towards the inside and kind of make those runners that Perkins is known for.
Right.
So yeah. I thought we were fine in a lot of ways offensively. I just think the defense. I definitely don't know how I feel about Travis Ford installing some defensive looks the day of the game, Pete.
Yeah, it seems I agree. It seems like this is kind of it's reminding me, as we're just kicking off this World Cup about how late in the game the US men's national team seems to have kind of figured out what they're trying to do, who they're playing, who's going to make the roster, all of these things that we thought were going to be settled a little bit earlier in the cycle. And now I feel like it's the same thing with this team. Like we should kind of know by now what we can do. I know Travis likes to mix it up and throw different looks at teams, but I just yeah, you don't feel great about like I'm picturing them in a hotel a banquet room or lobby or whatever practicing these walkthroughs the night before a game in one of these multi-team events where they barely had any time to scout a team or watch video or whatever. Even if there has been an assistant or two assigned to a potential game, it does seem like a lot to throw at them on short notice. I don't know. I think it's a fair question. I do have another question for you though, Zach. Should Yuri Collins have fouled up 3 on that last play? Providence inbounded down 3 with 4 seconds left, and it wound up with a pretty clean look from half court that barely rimmed out for Bynum. Should Collins have fouled him there?
I think the I'm not a foul up 3 guy. I'm not. I think, and the announcer made a point to say there was a little time left, and that's why they could get away with fouling up 3. I almost disagree because of the ball placement as far as where they were inbounding it. If it's a the women's game where you can advance the ball and whatever, like onto the sideline, if that's where it's coming from, I say you maybe foul. Maybe. But I think if they're going to have to throw a baseball pass with 7 seconds left, I say just hang outside, have your guys hang outside on the 3-point arc and just, do like you're a team handball team and just make sure that you're, like Yuri did, he stepped in front of a guy, just stay in front of a guy, make sure they can't get a clean catch on the ball and defend. It was a great play by Yuri. Really kind of, I want to say it was ballsy, but again, you're up 3. You have that chance where if you get a foul, you get a foul, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So right. A great heads up play by Yuri to be aggressive there, knowing that he's going to send him to the line for 2 and not 3. So again, I wouldn't intentionally foul, but I think the point is to be aggressive, knowing that you've got the advantage being up 3 and you can foul.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. I think I probably would have, but I do understand that. Yeah, you're right. Coming from the opposite end with 4 seconds left is a little bit different than if it had been like 11 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
The clock is more of your enemy at that point.
How did they end up back there? Because they brought it into the front court, and then Cooley called a timeout because they weren't doing anything.
You're making me go to the play-by-play now because I want to make sure I have the sequence right.
No, I mean I know that they had to throw it in from the baseline because it literally, like, I can recall the play down to the positioning on the court, but I'm trying to remember why they had to take it out from there.
Well, that was the free throws.
Oh, you're right.
So we were already up 1.
That's okay because they missed.
Yeah. So the free throws were so that's what he made with 4 seconds left. Yeah. That's why they were inbounding from down there. Yeah. But although that does make me wonder, when you back up a couple seconds, when Bynum misses that jumper that they wanted the foul on, do you think that was a foul, or did SLU kind of get away with one there?
Oh no, I don't think that was a foul at all. You had that completely correct on Twitter. That if that's a foul, so is every hard screen.
Yes. I mean, I thought they played this about as straight up as they could. Their feet weren't moving. He ran into 2 defenders who were playing straight up. They didn't cheat with their arms and bring their arms down on him or anything like that. They didn't throw their hips into him. I thought they played it as straight up as they could have. And honestly, shame on the announcer for really making that sound like it was number one, an inconsistency by the refs, because he kept saying, why aren't they calling that the same at both ends? And number 2, that it was a foul at all. I thought that was just completely different than the play at the other end. And just, I don't know, absurd. If you're going to call that as a foul, that's incredibly soft. It's not the kind of thing from the tenor of that game that I would have expected them to call a foul on. And I would have been furious if that wound up being a foul.
Yeah, I think a lot of Providence fans felt upset at the officiating in this one. I know on their message board, a guy at halftime said, "Hey, be aware of the foul situation," because the foul situation was awful in the first half. The second half, again, the self-fulfilling prophecy. We're seeing what's not there. Again, that the Yuri Collins and one, that's an and one. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's an and one.
Right.
It's like porn. I don't. I know it when I see it, and that that's.
It's one of those things that I think historically, by the letter of the law, I wouldn't have liked as a continuation, but I just see that called as a continuation, and not just in the NBA. That's being called as a continuation in college more too. If it's the way the game is called now, then so be it. It's fine.
Yeah. What did you think of the officiating overall in this one?
I didn't have a major issue with it. I mean, we had a few guys in the first half. I don't want to say get into foul trouble, but we did have 3 or 4 guys who wound up with 2 fouls in the first half. I thought they were a little hard on Okoro, although I do think a couple of his fouls were also stupid, like the one where he fell to his knees after blocking the shot and still fouled. I think it was Bynum.
He just got fouled because he was in like a bad position. He had a really rough game for 10 points, 9 rebounds, because I mean, you have that kind of oafish foul and then a little bit of an oafish just kind of like falling out of bounds.
Right.
He couldn't keep his balance, and it was just a kind of a laugher, like a jolly game in a lot of ways.
Forrester kind of had some foul issues as well. He was trying to force things a little bit offensively, especially in the first half. I didn't think it was the best showing by our bigs. Again, on paper, you wind up with 17 points, 11 rebounds out of them. You also wind up with 7 fouls in less than 40 minutes played by them. It was just kind of a so night overall for those guys.
What do you think about Parker? I mean, he's really struggling shooting the ball and scoring.
I don't think this is a Rashad Williams situation where he's a guy who came in last season super hyped as a big shooter, and he was a guy who I think had no value playing the way that we played him, which is just limited minutes off the bench like that. He needs run, he needs volume for him to be effective at all. And he was a bad defender, and that's why he didn't play, and I get that. But if you want him to have any offensive value at all, you got to leave him out there for 5 to 10 minute stretches, because once he shoots, he heats up. That's how he feels it. I think Parker is a much better all around player. I think he's a guy that keeps defenders honest, because he scores in a variety of ways. I've seen him make shots from all over the court in JUCO. I know he could shoot it, and that's something that translates. He was making shots from NBA range regularly in JUCO. It's not like he's just facing tougher defenses and struggling to get looks. It's not that at all. It's gonna fall. The season is young. I think we've got to get him more and more run and just let him find it. I think people forget that it took a little while for Javonte Perkins, his junior year, his first year at SLU, to kind of find his game. And I think it's true of Parker too. He's making a jump from JUCO, and it's a transition period.
Yeah, I think Javonte was hidden a little more too, right? It just felt like it was easier to avoid the fact that Perkins wasn't scoring the way we know now. And there's also recency bias to go along with it. I talked to a couple people that were at the game, and they really talked about how the team looked confident in their ability to win down the stretch, and that Providence really looked gassed. What did you see on TV? Because I mean, it is amazing how much different. I think when Chapley jokes about how I'll say the vibes are good, I
Yeah.
think that's like legit though, that you can get a totally different vibe from a team when you're at the game versus at home.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't get that sense at all. If anything, I thought maybe Slew looked a little more tired in this one. So that kind of surprises me. But no, I don't think that came across on TV at all as well.
Yeah, I think there's a way you can spin this win in that it was a depth win, right? It was an attrition win, and these are the kind of this is why you have a team that's this deep at guard,
Mhm.
and I mean now we're not obviously deep at center, but this is why you bring in this much talent for games like this where you're going to need every single one of these players to contribute. And I think what's lost in kind of a poor defensive effort in the first half and kind of getting down and having to claw your way back into it is perhaps this was more so that Providence was talented but was lacking the depth that the Billikens had, and the Billikens just at the end of the day outlasted Providence, and Providence couldn't hold on to that lead.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's all right.
Pete, what is your week 2 overreaction? What are you overreacting about this week?
I'm overreacting, and I don't really have a whole lot to add on the subject because I got into it. But I'm worried about us guarding a traditional college four. I'm scarred by watching Dante Scott play against this team and just do whatever he wants. I think there are other teams who we're going to struggle against because we just don't have a natural matchup with them. I hope either we figure out how to use Pickett or different combinations
Trade
with our
deadline.
bigs. I'm afraid that may have passed us by. I don't think there's a whole lot left on our non-conference schedule that really scares me, except maybe Auburn when it comes to that. But I do think there are some good teams here, like Drake, like Boise State. SIU is really good this year, and don't forget that we have to go to Iona. You spoke earlier in the show about a team that really tested the refs early, and I think you were talking about Memphis really getting after us physically, playing the full length of the court. And Rick Pitino teams absolutely play like that. And they're going to be playing in their home gym, which is going to be an unusual road game for us. So there is some stuff coming up on this schedule that kind of scares me in terms of I hope we're matching up well. And that's the one position, especially where I think we give up a lot in our matchups. So Zach, what are you overreacting to 2 weeks in?
We suck at rebounding, Pete. I don't understand it. Whether it is being not being in the position to get the initial rebound, or bringing down the ball but kind of fumbling it, or I mean, just it seems like it's Murphy's law. Like yesterday's game was Murphy's law be against Maryland. Everything that could go wrong did. I feel like on the rebounding side of things in this one, it really was Murphy's law. We had 2 good rebounds in that game, 2 key rebounds. And other than that, I was beside myself trying to watch this game and see us just continuously getting beat on the glass. I mean, this game shouldn't have been close. The Billikens should have won by 10 to 15 if we clean up our defensive rebounding.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's a double-digit win.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Again, we mentioned that Thatch will be out a week to 10 days, according to Rammer. He's got to get some of those 2 men in the garden pickles, get those electrolytes back up and get back on the court. You know what I'm saying, Pete?
I do know what you're saying. And of all of your transitions into the ad break, that might be the most shameless one yet.
Yes, it was.
This season. I want to draw your attention this time to 2 Men in a Garden's social media. I think they're definitely worth a follow. 2 Men Salsa on Instagram, in particular. The thing I like is that, especially if you're local, if you're listening to us from the St. Louis area, they're always talking about like where they are. They were just at a convention in Overland Park this weekend, and
which is coincidentally not local.
Oh yeah, Overland Park. Sorry, I'm thinking of just straight up Overland, like up by the airport. But yeah, Overland Park. So yeah, so they're out on the other side of the state, basically, Kansas City. But yeah, the followed by they had a setup at Straub's in Webster Groves. They like to say, like, when they're at a farmer's market. I know we're not really in the season for that. But they're always telling you kind of what events they're at, and I think it's good to go give them a visit, especially if they're at a thing like a farmer's market where you can buy directly from them. There's no better way to support a local business than to buy straight from them, cut out the middleman wherever you can, and get to know them, because they're really nice people. So be sure and follow all of their social medias. Like I said, it's at Two Men Salsa on Instagram, I think is the best one. But go to twomeninthegarden.com, and the rest of their social links are there.
Pete, coming up next, Wednesday, the 23rd versus Paul Quinn College. Let's spend about 30 minutes previewing an NAIA team for our listeners.
Yeah, we're gonna go player by player here and really break down what they do. No, I just at a really high level. Paul Quinn, as a reminder, is an NAIA school, like Zach said. It's an HBCU based in Dallas. They got some publicity from ESPN a little while back because they have a really unique court. And I recommend going.
We talked about it on our show too.
We did. As another reminder, their head coach, Brandon Espinoza, is also the head coach of the 17 and under Drive Nation AAU team, which is in the Nike EYBL circuit. I think he also has a director position within the EYBL itself. So this game,
it's shameless.
It looks weird. Yeah. Like, why aren't we playing, like, if we're going to do this, why not play Harris Stowe or somebody like that again? But this is deepening an important recruiting relationship in, a market that we're recruiting more heavily than anywhere but St. Louis. To give you an idea of their other D1 games so far, they lost an exhibition game at SMU 80-66, which is not a big margin for a D1 game. But then TCU beat them 112-42. And that came on back-to-back nights. I would expect SLU's margin to be somewhere in between those two. I think we're going to win by more than 14, but we're probably going to win by less than 70. They beat UNT Dallas by 1. I can't find a score for their game against Holy Patriot, which is not even an NAIA team, on the 14th.
I think I played them again in CYC.
Holy Patriot. Yeah, it's the Patriot part that's kind of weird. I'm like, Holy. I played a lot of teams that started.
How do you make a holy bartender?
How, Zach?
It's from Dogma. It's a visual gag. I can't do the punchline.
I thought we were gonna have to slap an E on this.
Jason Lee plays the devil. He goes into a bar. He goes, "Do you know how to make a holy bartender?" And then he kills the bartender.
I see. All right. I thought you were setting me up for a
no. It's no.
All right. Well, so the one advantage that they're going to have, Paul Quinn, they're going to be playing SLU on 9 days rest. So they're going to be well rested when we see them, and that's really, I think, all that we'll say about Paul Quinn at this point. This should be a very sound, resounding victory.
Do you think they can bring the court with them?
Wow, that would be a lot of work. It would be fun to kind of see that in Chaffetz, though.
Yeah, I kind of do want to go down there and check this out. This is It really does feel like kind of a shameless, like, hey, we'll pay you $70,000 to come lose to us, and then you give me one of your recruits.
Say nice things about us to your players.
Exactly. The game playing second fiddle to Paul Quinn, Auburn. A little known school from a small corner of Alabama.
Yes.
Yeah. They actually have at least one prior game against an Atlantic 10 team.
Yeah, they do. They started the regular season actually against George Mason at home and beat them by 18, 70-52. Since then, they've gotten wins over South Florida, which was a 12-point win. They had a 24-point win over Winthrop. And that was, I think that was, also at home. Sorry, it was part of their Cancun challenge, but it was at home. And then they just beat Texas Southern on Friday the 18th, 72-56. So they're 4-0. They haven't played anybody that was supposed to give them a whole lot of a game yet. But on Tuesday, the 22nd, before they play us, and then again on Wednesday, the 23rd, they're going to be in Cancun. They're going to start out against Bradley, and then they'll play either Northwestern or Liberty. Again, this is an event. SLU has actually played in this Cancun event before. This is an event Auburn is supposed to win. We'll likely see a 6-0 team by the time we play them. They are ranked number 13 in the country. They're very good. They're, if I remember, Zach, were they about number 10 when we faced them last year?
I thought they were top. Like I thought they were, 8.
They went to number 1 later because of a lot of other teams lost, and Auburn stayed undefeated a little deeper into last season. But they did lose from last season. Jabari Smith to the pros, Walker Kessler, the guy who was probably 7-1, who was destroying us on those little pick and roll lobs, and Devin Cambridge. So 3 players from last season that they lost. They do return Wendell Green. He's their leading scorer and assist man. I believe he's the one that Big Guard was telling us about, right? That he did a profile on.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, because he's only 5'11", but really talented. And this is another chance for Yuri Collins, another big test for him. Like Memphis was. They faced each other last season, but this is the big matchup coming into this one. There's no Jabari Smith. There's no Walker Kessler. Green's the guy who's a little bit more of a focus because they've got a bit, different team this year. Johnny Broom is their big man, averaging about a double-double. He's good, but again, he's this isn't as scary a front court as it was last season. The Almanac, to refer to that publication again, they say Auburn has the best home court advantage in the SEC, which I thought was interesting. I haven't been to a game there. I actually have never been to Auburn at all, but I would be curious to see one there because they're known as such a football school. I just would not have pegged that as the place to be, the most frightening place to play in the SEC.
It'll be interesting though. Because Auburn football will be on the road for the Iron Bowl.
That's right. Yeah, which is that weekend, and we're playing them on Sunday afternoon, the 27th, right? Which is Thanksgiving weekend coming up here. So it is interesting timing. It's going to be quite a road trip. Anytime you go into a power conference gym on the road is going to be a big battle, even if it's a team that's not as good as Auburn. But like I said, they are ranked number 13, and they're really supposed to roll this season. So we've got a big task ahead of us in this one, Zach.
Yeah, this is bizarre, right? If you look back at the box score for Auburn last year, Terrence Hargrove played 35 minutes and scored 17 points. 1 of 5 from 3, 7 of 13 from the field, 7 rebounds in this one for Hargrove. So maybe he gets a little more run. I know he's kind of been out of favor the last couple games. I know Ford was not happy with him in either of the games in Connecticut. Nesbitt started this one, played 37 minutes and scored 11 points. Collins scored 13 points, had 12 rebounds, and nearly had himself a triple-double in this one with 8 assists, 6 turnovers. So hopefully he'll clean that up this time around. Jimerson has scored 11 in this one, and then Okoro came off the bench for 27 minutes, 5 of 9 from the field, only 2 of 6 from the line, had 8 rebounds, but had 12 points. So it's going to be really interesting because there is a lot of difference in this Billiken team from last time around.
Yeah, there really is. It's going to be, this is also a game last year. If you remember, we got up 12 on them, 10 or 12 in the second half. And that was, I think at the under 8 media, and then proceeded to kind of walk the ball up the court and play really slowly. Mm-hmm. And there were, we heard mixed things about why we did that and whether it was the right thing to do. But Auburn chipped away at that lead and eventually won a tight game there at SLU. So we saw that one get away from us. So it's going to be interesting to see if we're hanging in there in this one the way that we were last season.
I'm so damn glad we don't have to deal with Walker Kessler in this game.
Yeah, he really killed us last season.
I mean, just torched us. And I wonder if that was a lot of the reason why Hargrove was in that game. Seems like a little bit of a different matchup, and Hargrove can be that stretch and come out and guard. And I want to see more of Hargrove as a stretch five. I really do. I think he's capable of it. It requires, a little less. I swear to God, if ESPN keeps auto playing videos, I'm gonna lose my mind. It scared the crap out of me about 5 minutes ago. Did you see me jump?
I did, and hit the mute and unmute. It does it to me all the time. Every time I
Oh,
try to pull up something on ESPN, that little video in the corners. If it's any consolation, I can't hear it through my speakers. I think you're just hearing it in your
yeah,
ears.
it just comes in my headphones, but it's really loud.
Yeah.
Um, let's go around the A10 here. Run us through what we saw from Atlantic 10 teams this past week, and
Yeah.
or in the last couple weeks, because we
Well,
have
right. Yeah, we're gonna kind of have to update through the season because, and forgive me, I'm doing this a little bit on the fly because I had it only half updated coming into this, but we did this every week before, and now we're gonna kind of have to give you an update of where they are overall. These standings reflect where they were coming into this weekend, so it's shuffled already quite a bit. But I'm going to start with Davidson, who's up to 5-1 now. That's the most wins yet in the conference. They have wins over non D1 Guilford College, Wright State, VMI, South Carolina, and Old Dominion. Their only losses against Charleston. So I think they won the consolation bracket of that Charleston Classic this weekend, I think is what happened there. Loyola, on the other hand, did not have a very good MTE. They had wins over Fairleigh Dickinson and UIC coming into it. And then they lost to Tulsa, Boise State, and Texas A&M this weekend. Good teams, all three of them. Boise State's a team that we're going to see pretty soon. Texas A&M, I believe, is ranked number 24 at the moment. So, no shame in any one of those wins, or I'm sorry, losses individually, but collectively, that's tough for Loyola there. Dayton is up to 3-1 now. They beat Lindenwood and SMU to start the season. They went out to UNLV and had a lead for a long time, and gave it up. Wound up losing 60-52 out there. Horrible second half. Had some injury issues as well. And then they came home and beat Robert Morris 60-51. I think the story so far with Dayton, they've been fighting the injury bug. They do have Mal Smith back. But at the same time, they just haven't been very convincing in any of their wins. Lindenwood, I think, was the biggest win, but even that they were kind of had some questions about. Duquesne, I'll go to next, also 3-1. They beat Montana, South Carolina State, Colgate. That's a nice win, actually. And they went down to Kentucky, number 4 Kentucky, and lost big. No surprise there. But Duquesne, Zach, was picked to finish at the bottom of the conference, and they've actually looked kind of better than most teams so far in the league, which kind of surprises me. Fordham, also 3-1. Also, I guess maybe slightly outperforming expectations, or maybe right at it, because they've beaten Dartmouth, New Hampshire, UIC. They lost to number 10 Arkansas, so really nothing surprising there yet. But you want to see Fordham, beating those kind of teams to at least hang. UMass, meanwhile, is 4-1, wins over Central Connecticut State, a nice win against Colorado. Murray State they beat by 2, and then Charlotte is their most recent win. So I would say they're actually outperforming expectations so far. Their only loss is to Towson, and if that sounds weird, Towson's actually supposed to be a pretty good team this year. A lot of people had them winning. I believe the Colonial is what they're in. Moving on to George Mason, they're down to 2-3 this season. They started out with that loss against Auburn that we already talked about. They beat Longwood, they beat American, and then this weekend they lost to Boston College and Belmont. So those are 2 games that are kind of a litmus test for a team like Mason to figure out where they were, and unfortunately they did not break in George Mason's way. The other George, Washington in conference, is 3-1, wins over Virginia State, non-D1. They beat Howard. They beat Maryland Eastern Shore, but not by much. And then they lost at Hofstra. Not the most confidence-inspiring 3-1 so far. And they've got UC San Diego coming up. LaSalle is 2-3 to start the year. Lost at Villanova. They beat Wagner and Queens at home before losing to Wake Forest and Georgetown. Georgetown was destroying them today, and somehow LaSalle came back and made this only a 7-point loss. So it looks a lot more respectable on paper than I think anybody thought it was going to be. Richmond is 2-2. Started out with wins over VMI and Northern Iowa, a very tricky Northern Iowa. And then they lost at Charleston by 92-90. That was a fun one. And lost a more low scoring affair against Wichita State at home, 56-53. And they face Syracuse next. So doesn't get any easier for Richmond. Across town, we'll move to VCU, who is 3-2 right now. Wins over Manhattan, Morgan State, and Pitt. Nice one. Lost to Arizona State by 4, and then at Memphis, they lost 62-47. So clearly, we scored almost double.
Yeah, it wasn't even close.
Yeah, what VCU did there. We knew VCU was going to struggle to score this year, and now they've lost Ace Baldwin to injury. So
I got a bone to pick with Memphis announcers at this game because they were kind of talking about this game as if it was like an equal game, like SLU and VCU were on equal footing. And I mean, that's just not the case. I mean, with
Right.
Ace Baldwin, okay, we're in the, the vicinity, but not, not without Ace.
It's going to be interesting to see kind of if people reassess what they thought about the 8-10 coming into this year. Nobody right now is running away with this league. That's clear. Nobody's undefeated at this point. Yeah, it's just gonna. I'm curious to see how teams kind of reassess now that SLU's 4-1, but we've played a much harder schedule and we'll continue to play a much harder schedule than a lot of other teams. So it's going to be interesting to see how that narrative sort of shapes. 2-1 is the record for St. Joe's. They lost to a number 3 ranked Houston to start the year, and then they went on to beat Lafayette and Albany. They face Georgia today as you're listening to this, if you're listening to this on Monday. Next up is UMass. I already did UMass. Rhode Island is who we're going to next. Rhode Island is only 1-2. Another team like UMass with the new coach lost to Quinnipiac, lost to Texas State, and beat Stony Brook, not all that convincingly. Today they will face Kansas State. And looking down the schedule here, they've got Boston College on the road. They've got Providence. Kind of a tough stretch for a team that has started losing a couple bye games this season. So could be a tough season for Rhode Island. They might not. A lot of people were kind of picking them as maybe a team that could be a sleeper, but I think that might be UMass and not Rhode Island. If you're looking at the teams with new coaches. Last but not least in this conference, we've got St. Bonaventure. That started the season with a win over St. Francis, Pennsylvania, and most recently they beat Bowling Green at home, and then they've got a loss at Canisius that I know bothered a lot of Bonnie's fans for even going to play that game, and then they've got a loss to South Dakota State. They played in that Sanford Pentagon or whatever they call it out in South Dakota, so wasn't a home game for South Dakota State, but pretty close to it. South Dakota State's a very good team. No shame in that loss either, but yeah, a couple of tough road games there for them. So that's the conference, Zach. And looking up and down so far, what most surprises you in this league, positive or negative?
I don't, honestly. I'm kind of right there. I think obviously people are talking about Duquesne. I don't even recall they exist half the time. They're kind of like the Seattle Mariners of the A10. The only reason I would say George Mason is probably more. I'm definitely surprised that Mason just got trounced by Auburn. I mean, they didn't even show up. I don't know. I think I kind of expected what we're seeing from Davidson. Are they really 5-1? I thought they lost a couple games in there.
That the only one they lost was that Charleston game, that first round of the Charleston Classic, and then they went on to beat South Carolina and Old Dominion in the losers bracket.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of surprising. I actually expected Davidson to have a little bit more of a fall off. I wonder how much Matt McKillop is really in charge and how much he's getting help. I don't know. Who knows? He's like he's got like his dad Kim Jong-un in his ear, like the North Korean soccer team. Pete, we had a bit of a real whirlwind commitment, recruitment and signing from Bruce Zhang.
Yeah, and I get a little pronunciation help from a friend who studied in China for a semester.
Pete, it's pronounced Bruce.
Bruce, that's right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, we had a little umlaut there, I think by mistake, maybe. So he says it's Zhang. Like you say the ZH, it's almost like kind of a J, but a little bit soft. So it's like a Zhang. That A is more of a short O sound. But yeah,
That
it really
does kind of
was.
track because I had an Asian roommate, a Chinese roommate, who would say my name. Like he would, yeah.
Like Jack or
Yeah.
Jacques.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Funny.
Yeah. So there you go. So
That's interesting.
that tracks then. He was right. Thanks, Connor. But you're right. It was a whirlwind recruitment and signing. It wasn't all that long ago that we found out about him in the first place. Had him on campus for the Evansville game. And visit went well, and he committed not long after, and then signed before the deadline back on the 16th. I think he probably got his letter in on the 15th, and there we go. We've got our 7-1 center of the future to go along with a pretty young but big front court next season when we get Momo Cisse back, and we've got Brock Weiss coming in. 3 really intriguing young bigs, but man, that is a young front court. So I would imagine we'll get them a little help in the transfer portal, maybe a veteran this spring.
I think it's really, I think it's funny, this Zhang commitment, because it's either going to be like the worst commitment ever. Like he's going to be like horrible, or he's going to be this absolute steal of this incoming class nationwide. Like he's going to be like an absolute like phenomenon. I don't see any middle ground here.
Yeah, like I'm optimistic that it'll be more one of those like, where did you find this kid? Because he's only been in the States for a few months. I think he came over in August or the end of July or something like that. So he hasn't been here long at all, like 3 or 4 months. And he's only in the last week started to play like official games. He plays for the Skill Factory down in Georgia, and their schedule just started up. And so like no one's really even seen this guy. It's really been word of mouth or coaches coming in to check on other players and seeing him work out is how people have found out about him so far. He obviously didn't play AAU, and he's just starting to play organized games, as we record this. So by the time other coaches are going to see him and go, who is that guy? He's already signed with SLU, and that's a big deal. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to call him a bust because
no, there's no reason to.
You're right.
I'm saying that
it's going to be one or the other.
One. Yeah. He will be, I believe he will be the first Chinese national to play for St. Louis University.
Yeah. I think the first player from any Asian country, as a matter of fact.
Yep. Hopefully it'll be good for student attendance. I think, he's got, there's quite a few Chinese students. I mean, maybe we get them out. Representation matters, right? That's what everybody talks about.
There might be something to that. I feel like every other player that we've had from a foreign country are not countries that are very well represented on campus. So maybe he will have a like little support group there.
But like I said, he will be the first player from an Asian country to play for St. Louis University. He will also be the tallest player in Billiken history. So here's the trivia question of the week, and you can tweet at us. Only 4 previous players were officially listed at 7 feet. Who are they? And Pete, give the people a little hint.
I'll give you one little hint here. They played for 3 different coaches. I initially thought they played for 4 different coaches, but was wrong. I think one coach had 2 of these guys, but we're talking about guys who were officially listed at 7 feet. There were people that we recruited who may have been called 7 feet or who word of mouth, we called them 7-footers, but we're talking about people who were officially listed at 7 feet, 3 different coaches represented, and the honor code here, as always with a trivia question.
We talked a little bit about Hargrove earlier in the show, and I've mentioned that I would like to see him play a stretch 5, but I wondered what Billiken fans thought. So we put out a poll, Pete. We saw a lot of foul trouble amongst our 5s this entire season so far.
Yeah.
When Okoro and Forrester get into foul trouble, would you like to see more of Hargrove as a stretch 5? Obviously, Cisse is fine, but I just think that personally, my opinion was that a little more experience would be helpful, probably. And Billiken fans kind of agreed. 67 total votes, and the response was 79.1% yes, 20.9% no. So, Pete, where do you stand on this one?
Yeah, I don't mind throwing that look out there. I don't think it's something that I would want to see for a long, I wouldn't want to see that for like a 20-minute half. But if you run him out there for 5-7 minutes, something like that, I think it is useful. I think he did a good job in that Auburn game you mentioned earlier, in the show season, where we put him on Jabari Smith for a while and he kind of frustrated him. I think Hargrove plays better when he has those kind of like purpose driven stretches to play. He had an awful game against Maryland.
He's got to have a goal.
Looked lost out there. And I think if he's got an assignment like that, I think he rises to the occasion.
Like in this past game where he looked outstanding in the zone.
Yeah.
I think that's what I want to see. I want to see us run that 2018 A10 tournament zone. Let him use his length. But that's my opinion. I'm not the smartest when it comes to basketball. I'm certainly not a basketball mind. Pete, Jordan Goodwin is doing things in the NBA, and he survived a little scare the other day.
He did. He had a teammate come down. What's the team? I'm forgetting the dude's name. It's another guard on Washington who he made a layup in traffic, fell backwards, landed awkward. Goodwin was out by the 3-point line, saw him go up for the layup and did his Goodwin thing where he rushes into the basket right behind him, always hunting for those offensive rebounds. Goodwin was right behind him where he came down, and the guy fell, landed on his butt sitting down, but hit Goodwin's knee awkwardly. Goodwin fell back toward like the free throw line and left the game with a knee injury. And I know we were all holding our breath. And from what I saw on Twitter, a lot of Wizards fans were also very, very scared that this was going to be a knee injury that took Goodwin out for a while. And very, very fortunately, that was not the case. And he was able to play since then. On the 16th against Oklahoma City, he had 24 minutes, 5 points, 2 rebounds, an assist, and 3 blocks. And then on the 20th against Charlotte, he played 20 minutes, 4 points, 3 rebounds, an assist, and 3 turnovers. So not his best game, but I think he continues to make a case for himself as somebody who can get reserve minutes in the NBA and really be effective. Wizards fans have fallen in love with him in short order, and it's not quite Linsanity levels, but there is a cult following of Jordan Goodwin that's building.
Yeah, it's local Goodwin sanity.
That's right.
Let's run down women's basketball, some volleyball to talk about, but we've really packed in a lot in the last about hour, 20 minutes. 71-55 loss at Missouri State. Pete, run us down just kind of the basics. What do we need to know?
Yeah, so the issue here is they got out to a 26 deficit in the first quarter and never recovered. That wound up being pretty close to the margin. McMakin did it again, Zach. The Iverson thing, 17 points, 17 missed field goals, just like she had 14 and 14 last week. So she was 7 of 24 overall and 0 of 7 from 3. Clegg, unfortunately, was also off on this one. Flowers had a quiet 11 and 5. SLU finished with a slash line of 35.5%. 11.1% from three and 56.3 from the free throw line. They went 2 of 18 from three. Just a horrible shooting game here. They were out rebounded. They were doubled up 52-26. Of course, when you miss that many shots, you're feeding a lot of rebounds to your opponent. And what kept this even somewhat respectable in the margin there is that SLU somehow forced 27 turnovers from Missouri State. So if they didn't do that, this would have been a lot worse.
Friday, 11-18, 73-70 loss versus Green Bay. McMakin, 11 for 25, 6 of 13 from three, 3 of 3 from the line, 31 points, 9 rebounds. Flowers, 14 and 5, nice game for her. Kennedy Calhoun, I just lost the spot. 5 assists, 6 rebounds, but still not scoring, in earnest. Got in a deficit early and didn't regain the lead until late in the fourth quarter. Flowers hit a 2 to make it 67-65 after that. SLU turned it over twice, had to start fouling. Green Bay hit every free throw. Pete, talk about this South Dakota game today.
Yeah, so South Dakota, like Green Bay, was another one. A tough home loss, narrow deficit in a game you would have liked to grab. Brooke Flowers did tie Arlene Lampe with 9 blocks in a game, and I believe the team also tied a program record with 11 blocks in a game. McMakin had 18 points on 7 of 21 shooting, 2 of 9 from three. So another inefficient game after such a good performance against Green Bay. But it's really going to be all or nothing with her, I think. Brooke Flowers had 12 points, 6 of 10 from the field. Martinez, Zach, I don't know why she's not playing more. She did start in this one and ended up 2 of 4 from the field, 4 or 5 from the free throw line, and had 12 rebounds, but really looks like the most dynamic playmaker out there for SLU. So yeah, I think they got to play her more.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like from this team, but there's a lot to dislike. One of those things being the competitiveness and kind of at least, putting up fights in some of these games. Again, 4-point loss against South Dakota, 3 against Green Bay. Obviously, Missouri State was a bit of a poor showing. Coming up next is the Gulf Coast Showcase in Estero, Florida. November 25th to 27th. Billiken start with number 17, Baylor. Then they'll play Belmont or Villanova in a third team to be determined between Michigan, South Florida, Georgia Tech, or Air Force. Pete, on the volleyball side of things, their season comes to an end. Number 5 seed, St. Louis University, loses to number 4 seed, George Washington, 3-1 in the A10 tournament at Chaffetz Pavilion. This is a first round matchup. The Billikens drop it 19-25, 25-23, 25-27, and 17-25. For now, Kent Miller is still in charge of SLU volleyball. We'll see where that lands tomorrow. I know the Sunday scare has got to be hitting hard for Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. We did have a couple bright spots in this one. Lynn got to 1,000 career assists. Rogers got the single season digs record, 597. But they finished the season 18-13 overall, 10-8 in conference. It was kind of an up and down, weird conference this season. Some teams underperformed, overperformed, that were a little bit unexpected. But regardless, I think SLU's got to be a little bit better than this, Zach. And I know you've been banging the drum about that all season long. Meanwhile, Loyola was the 1 seed. They went on to win the title in their first ever A10 season. With a 3-1 win over 3 seed Dayton today in the final. It's a shame that in a conference tournament held at Chaffetz Pavilion, that SLU was not a more competitive team in this one and just showed up in the first game of day one.
Yeah, I still remember. I think it was men's soccer. We ended up hosting an A10 tournament and didn't make the tournament. I think it was a 4-team tournament. And I believe I heard Chris May say, that's never happening again. So
yes.
This was close, but they made the tournament, but didn't do very much of anything. And I think you lose to a George Washington team. That's a first-year head coach over there, and you lost to them 3 times in one game,
right,
or in one season. You can't have that. That's going to do it for us this week in Billiken Athletics. Follow us on Twitter at Midtown Mad Pod, at Peter is a tweeter, at Zach Miller MMP, and on Instagram at Midtown Mad Pod. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I think it was a big time basketball heavy episode, and I think those who listen to us specifically for basketball are going to really appreciate it. Just as we appreciate any and all suggestions you might have for the show, please go subscribe on all platforms and leave us a review if you haven't. Drop 5 stars too. Pete, as always, go Bills.
Go Bills.